Well, welcome everybody. Great to have you here. This is the Passive House Accelerators Construction Tech featuring Prudence Ferreira, who is a co-host of the Global Passive House Happy Hour every Wednesday. So it's great to have her as a guest tonight for Construction Tech. The Passive House Accelerator is a collaborative online platform for sharing innovation and thought leadership in passive house design and construction. We publish articles and interviews. We produce weekly virtual confabs with Passive House pioneers from around the world. And we elevate the work and programming of the Passive House movement's leaders, practitioners, and organizations through interviews, articles, social media campaigns, videos, and podcasts. Our aim is to catalyze zero carbon building by accelerating the adoption of Passive House buildings. With our co-hosts, Kevin Brennan, Sean St. Amour, and Mark Willey, we've launched Construction Tech Tuesday to share the technical, the technique, and the technology of Passive House construction tech. Each week, we'll welcome guest practitioners to dive into the details of practice with the builder and tradesperson as our target audience. We welcome folks from all corners of the construction and design world to join us each week. And we want to give a special shout out to Partel, who is our sponsor of the week this week and is supporting all of our programming. And with that, I'll hand it off.
We're in store for a great show tonight. We have Prudence Ferreira. She has been a Passive House pioneer for many years. And through her career, she has said, I'm not going to live by the rules anymore, and has changed the world around her.
Kevin, before I go, I think there's one thing you forgot to say. You might see it in Sean's background.
Passive House Accelerator, Construction Tech, Technical, Technique, Technology, Tuesdays.
Wonderful, Kevin. Without telling too much about myself, it's Mark Willey. I will tell you, I first met Prudence in 1992. I was at Phil Connor's house over in Woodstock, Illinois. We had a get-together after of course, the chess championship. And I want to welcome everyone tonight to Passive House Accelerator, Construction Tech, Technical, Technique, Technology.
All right, everybody, I'm Sean St. Amour. I'm a product consultant with 475, and I really enjoy talking to you guys about the technical, the techniques, and the technology every week.
Welcome to our host, to the guest on the show. Prudence Ferrer has been a Passive House pioneer for the U.S. for many years. And I'm sure she has said, I'm not going to live by the rules anymore, and has changed the world around her in doing so. Passive House Accelerator, Construction Tech, Technique, Technology, Tuesdays.
Hello, I'm not going to talk too much about myself. This is Mark Willey, and I'd like to say I first met Prudence in 1992 at a party by Phil Connors in Woodstock, Illinois. And of course, that was after a chess tournament. And welcome to Passive House Accelerator, Construction Tech, Technical, Technique, Technology.
Hey everybody, it's Sean St. Amour. I'm a product consultant with 475. I really enjoy talking to you about the technique, the technical, and the technology with you every week. Happy Groundhog Day, everybody.
Oh, you
my
guys.
God.
You guys are terrible.
That was
Intelligent woman and
So well done.
Modeling better than, faster than knife and cut butter. And she's a fantastic teacher. Now, can we get to Prudence?
We will, Dale. Hold on, Dale. We'll get there. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
6 more weeks of winter in Dale's neighborhood.
Yep. All right, let's get on with the fun. Again, we're just trying to, make sure that we're all having fun on this lovely day. So we have Prudence Ferreira, who is probably one of the most experienced Passive House people that, I definitely know. She's definitely the guru of this. Some will put her, and I definitely put her, with the combination of sheroes in our Passive House clan. Well over a dozen years of Passive House projects, kind of mainly focusing on the bigger ones of late. She's involved in PHIUS training, and some of you, this will probably be the 4th hour of her today. That's again, lots of great knowledge that she's being able to involve. Yes, Michael giving you props because he's been listening in all day. It's been a busy year for Prudence. She's moved from Vancouver to California to Philly and now is in Boston. Her hairy executive assistant might chime in with some passive house knowledge, but we'll see how the day goes. She's also the co-host of the Passive House Global Happy Hour, which I get to hang out with, and she's very knowledgeable in exercising that. So, all right, bring out your pens and your notebook. You might want to take some notes. You might want to note some of the times in the show when she brings you the knowledge. But we're very happy and very lucky to have Prudence talk about avoiding passive house fuck-ups. Prudence, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, you guys, for the multiple introductions. For a minute there, I thought like there was something wrong with my computer. That was pretty good. I am going to dive right into my slide deck and just have a little bit of patience with me as I get this going. Okay, so really what this is all about is not showing you guys dirty laundry from lots of projects, but it's more about how we can do better as builders, as trades, as an industry to help ourselves and to help each other. So it's about improving our industry, bright ideas for doing that, and our projects and our quality of life. And I definitely have some special thanks in here. Morrison Hirschfield, the firm I was with previous to BR+A Consulting Engineers that I'm working with now in Boston, they definitely contributed a lot to my knowledge. And Stephen Wong gets special thanks. He gave some great information and images for some of the slides you're going to see, and also the component modeling crew there. I had originally given a version of this presentation with Dave Solomon of Revision Architecture, so special thanks to him. And also special thanks to Scott Pusey of Stephen Winters Associates and the LeadCore team in Vancouver, and countless others I've learned from. And I know that we usually do this at the end, but I just can't help myself. Adam Cohen is in the audience tonight. He is my mentor. He has taught me so much and inspired me so deeply. He's semi-retired now. He can't help himself. He's continuing to innovate, and he's one of the smartest people I know, and definitely more expert at passive house than I am. So Adam, I hope I do you proud. I learned a lot of this from you. All right. So as I mentioned before, this is not dirty laundry. So to protect the innocent, no projects or people have been harmed in this fast and furious download of lessons learned. And Mark told me I should make a logo. So here it is on the lower left, Passive Prue and her little dog too. She's 130 pounds of stubborn sled dog, and I love her. All right, so on we go. All right, so I've worked on a lot of different projects. I started with the super small, like backyard accessory dwelling units in San Francisco, and I've gone to the super big. I've been doing this for a while, so I've learned a lot of lessons. And my first husband was an architect. Then I learned my lesson. My second husband was a passive house builder. And I actually got to live in a net zero passive house, not certified, but nevertheless, a net zero passive house in Fairbanks that was built by him. So I definitely respect the builder's perspective, and I feel for it, even though I'm not a builder myself. So when it comes to the passive house system, everything I'm going to describe to you guys is system agnostic. It doesn't matter where we're at, where we're building, all of these lessons learned are going to apply. How much does it cost? Well, Harvey and others, it costs your sanity. These lessons learned and not incorporating them into your life can cost sleepless nights, can cost frustration with yourself because your clients aren't happy, or people on your team are like, why is that tradesman or why is that builder like making my life miserable? So in terms of incorporating what I'm going to tell you, I promise you, I have gone through lots of misery and struggling and learning these lessons. So please stand on my shoulders and make your life better. All right, so here we go. Construction failures. These are failures that I have seen in my years of practice. The first one is not bringing, and I'm talking big projects here. So for those of you working on small projects, these lessons can still apply, but when I say CM, I'm talking pretty big projects that have overlapping design and construction phases that are on fast timelines with tight budgets. So the first failure is not bringing the construction manager on early enough. And ideally that's during design. And the result is that the design is not informed by constructum perspectives. To the extent that we can have design builders working with us in vertical integration, that definitely helps. A poorly written passive house spec, and I put that in quotes because I've seen a lot of passive house consultants and architects do their absolute best, like, we need to make this spec really good and really clear because we have to achieve passive house. But a lot of what goes in there, the language, it's simply not enforceable and it's not clear and actionable by a builder or by trades. And what ends up happening then is we get fear factor pricing from our trades because they're like, I have to comply with this nebulous thing in the spec and I don't know what it means. So I'm gonna jack my pricing up. The next failure is not providing a base level of passive house education for the team. And that can happen multiple ways. It can be a requirement that all bidders or all trades, if you are in the trades or in a construction management firm, that you get your team educated. Some RFPs can require that. And to the extent that they don't, it's still a really important thing to bring to the table. So if no one else has brought it and you're in the position of saying, hey, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page and rowing in the same direction, getting those basic passive house principles down and specifically as pertains to applying them on the project is really important. To the extent that we don't do that successfully, it leads to fear of the unknown on the part of the trades. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and not everyone is rowing in the same direction. The next failure that I've seen multiple times is not immediately and clearly disclosing passive house sticky spots. And what that means is could be handoff from the CPHC to the builder or from the CPHC to the passive house verifier, from the architect to the builder. When you are building the plane in flight, in other words, you're not done designing the project yet and working out all the details and it's already going out for tender. Everyone needs to be clear, like, okay, we haven't quite figured this stuff out yet. We all need to pay attention to it and help problem solve. To the extent that we bring those out right away and don't try to hide them, everyone can bring their skills to the table to help figure those things out quickly and in a streamlined manner. If we don't do that, if we don't kind of like lay it all out there, we can end up with frustration on the parts of everyone, time delays, and potentially added expense when those sticky spots get unearthed when it's a little bit too late. And then the last failure that I've seen again and again, and sometimes this has been my failure early on, is no clear passive house roadmap that includes responsibilities, required data, and requirements from everyone from the very beginning. We need to let everyone know, like, okay, these are all the things you're going to be responsible for. And yeah, it's some extra stuff. But to the extent that we can lay that out clearly, even if it means people have to kind of readjust, we don't have any confusion. We have a clear roadmap. We all can refer to it and we move forward without confusion, with less inefficiency, less time delays. We probably will still have some. And no people midstream saying, hey, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. That's not in my scope of work. I need to charge you extra money. Okay. So in an ideal world, we have construction management design assist, or we have design builders working on our projects. And what that means is we have experienced people who have built passive houses, not just designed them, but built them, providing example passive house enclosure systems that are optimized for constructability, not just ones that look pretty on paper. And to the extent that we can provide examples like this earlier in the design process, that eliminates a lot of guesswork and design exploration on the part of the architect. The other thing that should be part of that ideal design assist construction management scope that builders can bring to the table is a second person doing a red line air barrier and thermal review of the plans and sections. Builders have special eyes. Even as a passive house consultant, I don't always catch every single thing. Builders definitely see things because you guys are looking with an eye towards how do I build this, right? So there's an opportunity there for folks who have experience building to start helping earlier and earlier. And whether that means you go to work for a consulting firm, or you approach architects and say, hey, you know, can I help you out during your design phase with the lessons that I've learned? Get creative. The important thing is that it's sort of all hands on deck as we transform our industry, and we need our people infiltrated into all roles. So if you're a builder, don't just stay in your builder box. If you have interest in exploring other ways that you can get at Passive House, expand your mind. So the other thing that can be really helpful is making sure less experienced CPHCs, and this is happening. I am teaching a class right now for PHIUS of 28 folks, many of whom they're going to be doing first Passive House projects, or they're not very experienced, and they need help, right? They're going to take on big projects. This is starting to happen where new CPHCs are taking on large scale projects that are fast paced, and they need all the help that they can get. So to the extent that builders can get involved and not kind of stay in your builder box, but if you have Passive House expertise, be helpful. And make sure that those less experienced CPHCs are modeling realistic, effective envelope R values, and including thermal bridges earlier if you have the means of getting involved earlier, or using reasonable placeholder values. And of course, that goes for major intersections, but there's lots of pesky thermal bridges that show up in these large projects that they may not even be thinking about, like garage columns or columns attached down to a raft slab on a high rise. Facade attachment, brick ties, roof anchors, mechanical screen attachments, equipment curbs, door thresholds, rain leaders and sanitary pipes, plumbing hatches that are opening into unconditioned space. The list goes on. Some examples, and this information is from my old firm Morrison Hirschfield, of useful information to provide during a CM design assist would be stuff that's graphic, because architects really appreciate graphics. And actually, you guys can have access to this source by going to the Low Teddy Guide. If you look that up online, you can find it. It's a pretty bomber resource. Here are some more images that came from Morrison Hirschfield that have, you know, it's like, hey, architect, we've done this before. We've done assemblies like this, and it may not be exactly what's right for your project, but look, there are things that are already modeled. You can find images like this on the Building Energy Thermal Bridging Guide or thermalenvelope.ca for lots of different assemblies that are going to be Passive House appropriate. So even if you don't have them in your own wheelhouse, you can provide some starting points. And then here's where the special understanding of phasing comes in. And again, the source of this slide is Morrison Hirschfield, but to the extent that we can help our architects understand the phasing and constructability of their details, that really helps them learn how to do it better next time. So let's just follow through the steps here. Step 1, concrete, insulation, and thermal barrier are cast in the plant as a panelized system. So this is a panelized system coming to the site. The panels get installed first. Step 2, install waterproofing membrane onto concrete enclosure. Note that the windows might be able to be pre-installed before installation onto the building. Step 3, install the window. Step 4, install the exterior weather seal. Step 5, install the interior seal to complete the air barrier. And step 6, install interior finishes. This makes it clear, and if we understand the phasing, we can ferret out where there might be any issues. In terms of common missed opportunities for window and door components, one thing that I've seen coming into projects that are in midstream and helping cross the finish line is that sometimes our consultants are not necessarily using our worst case scenario in terms of modeling and specifications. Instead, they're going right to the certified components and essentially handcuffing our trades and our builders when they go out to find products. And this leads to sole sourcing, which makes our Passive House products projects more expensive, and they don't need to be. So one of the things that can be helpful if you're a builder helping out on a project and it's not too late, in other words, they're still trying to decide on windows, is encouraging design teams to use those comfort and condensation risk criteria as their safety guardrails, and figuring out, okay, what is the worst performing thing I can have and still meet those criteria? Does that work in the model? And that allows us to have more flexible performance specifications and eliminate problems like sole sourcing. Also providing example window and door installation details that are optimized for constructability. We saw an example on the slide before, but you may have some in your wheelhouse that gives starting ideas for like, hey, this is a cool thing you can do. Paying extra attention to continuity of air barrier at door sills, where we're often jumping air barrier systems, right? And working out the phasing ahead of time, just like we saw with the slide with the window. That's just as important, if not more important, at doors. And then double checking window and door bids for compliance with whatever our performance specifications are, and making sure that the data that's being provided is modeled to the appropriate passive house protocols, because sometimes our trades, they're not aware of these modeling protocols we have for passive house. So we need to dig a little bit deeper and make sure, well, is it modeled to EN 673 or is it modeled to ISO 10077? And then this next point here, collaboration on window shop drawings with construction manager, trades, and architect. I'm going to drill down on this a little bit more later, because this is one area where I've seen a lot of efficiency gains in recent projects, and I want to share that technique with you guys. Window door installation mock-up. I know some projects don't have the budget for this, but even if you do one unit in a building or one area of a building and it's actually on the building and you use that as your mock-up, it's really, really imperative to give the trades, to give ourselves as builders, yourselves as builders, the opportunity to work. It's really invaluable. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later as well. And then another missed opportunity or fuck up that I've seen is not scheduling enough lead time for non-domestic windows and doors, and then we have scheduling delays. And then lastly, this was a tip I got from someone on this call, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember who, but I thought it was worth repeating here. Using a double silicone seal instead of closed cell spray foam to seal windows when and if the expanding foam tape gets value engineered out. Yeah, okay. So more construction management design assist scope, or builder design assist scope, because builders see things non-PH folk don't yet. They will eventually, but here we've got a plan, and we have this CMU stair core. And we see our red line rule that air barrier is going right up to the CMU, and it's like, oh, well, it's concrete, right? That's airtight, right? It's concrete. No, that's not good enough. And as builders, you guys can think it through and be like, we really need to make sure we're providing a complete air barrier, including the door, across this entire thing, because otherwise what can happen is, in the end, to the extent that we haven't, we end up going the risk route. We take that risk when we don't do that plan review well enough. And we can end up having air leakage at stair cores. We can see it in this upper right-hand corner in this left image here. As we move into the fray, say that we don't have design assist from our builders, or the builder is not brought on early, and here we go into construction. Having a clear roadmap that really highlights passive house primacy on any passive house project, like, hey guys, this is really, really important. And the requirements and responsibilities is really critical. And what this means, whether it's a checklist approach or a handbook approach, laying out what the passive house process is and how it's different and who is playing what role. And when it comes to the design team, that's something that needs to happen in the first design team meeting, but it needs to happen again at the passive house kickoff meeting for pre-construction. so that everyone knows who is doing what on the construction managers and trades team. And I've seen it done a few different ways. I've seen it where the construction manager has their passive house champion who's really managing all of the passive house requirements. And then I've also seen it where the construction manager is driving it down into the trades and requiring each one of the trades who are envelope trades to have their own passive house champion. I think that can be really effective too, so that it trickles up. Whatever the case is, there needs to be some clear reference that lays out what everyone is supposed to be doing. We can't rely on our trades who are not experienced to go read all the documentation, because whether we're working with PHI's system or working with PHIUS' system, the requirements are spread out across lots of different documents. And so we as the experts, it's our job to simplify for them, not tell them, oh, go look in these 3 different documents and you'll find what you need. So we need to help them put together a really cohesive, streamlined checklist or handbook that lays that all out for them. If it is a PHIUS project, those prerequisites need to be front and center, because guess what? We're going to have extra stuff to do, extra verification on site that's going to trickle down to what the trades need to do to prepare the building for these inspections and tests. So if that is the case, making sure that you're familiar before construction even starts with what this is and putting together a document that's got all of the testing and verification requirements in one place is really, really helpful. Common mechanical, electrical, and plumbing fails that a construction manager or builder can influence is maybe you're looking at the issued for construction drawings and you notice, hey, where's the insulation on the pipes? I see insulation on some of the pipes, but not all of them. Did it get missed? Like, it's not too late to raise your hand. They haven't been installed yet. And it goes for ducts too. Not putting all of the penetrations front and center in a schedule, right? We've got all kinds of other schedules for mechanical equipment. So why not have a schedule that lists all of our penetrations by building level, right? That helps us really keep track of what we're doing for air sealing and mitigating thermal bridges where those penetrations daylight. And then in terms of common pre-construction fails that I've run across, and I'm listing these here so you guys don't do them, is not providing a crystal clear pre-certified passive house basis of design that gives the trades flexibility in sourcing. And what I mean by that is at the point where we're starting to go in construction, we're bringing the trades on, we should ideally already have pre-certification before construction starts. And I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, yes, I have multiple projects where that doesn't happen. Life happens. But to the extent that you have a clear basis of design and you know what it is, and your CPHC has modeled it to be as flexible as possible, so we know we're going to pass and give flexibility in sourcing our products and materials, the trades need to know exactly what that is. And it needs to be in short form so that they can look essentially at one sheet and say, okay, my wall type X, Y, and Z are this. This is what it is. And here's a reference where I can go find information. My anything, they should be able to look and see like, okay, well, this is the R value that I need to meet. This is the kind of clip that we're using, and anything that changes in that basis of design, that needs to be run by the passive house consultants. So we make sure that we're not going to fail and our certification is not in jeopardy. And I'm going to show you guys an example of what I use with my design teams to help that process be clear. The other thing I've seen is, well, I already mentioned this before, not providing or requiring bidders to have a base level of passive house knowledge. And it's not just base level of knowledge. We want them to come along for the ride because this is damn cool stuff. This is really exciting. We're changing the world. We're making better buildings. And they should get to have the pride and be part of that as well and get that good feeling of taking part in something that's revolutionizing our industry. Passive house verification plan draft, not created prior to trades bidding. So the trades essentially don't know what is going to be verified and how they have to prepare for it. That I see that a lot, actually, even on current projects. Like people don't get it together soon enough. And that means that the trades labor price is not inclusive of all of those passive house verification tasks. So that's going to be a change order later on, or they're going to feel resentful and burned. No CPHC review of bids for compliance implications of value engineering by trades. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we're going out to bid, the trades are already trying to be helpful, and they might think, oh, hey, I have a better way to do this. I don't need to do exactly what's on here. I have a creative way of saving money, and they don't realize, hey, that creative way you have is actually going to endanger passive house compliance. So we need someone who's a passive house expert, whether it's on the CM side, or, I mean, anyone really, getting their eyes on those bids to make sure that they're not putting us in danger. This is a big fail, not holding a passive house focused pre-construction meeting with the design team, the construction team, and the verification team all attending to review and explain design intent, details, submittal and substitution, review process, and verification. This sets the whole tone for construction. And I know sometimes we're getting into the site, we're putting shovels down, we're doing excavation and stuff. So it's sort of a soft start, and we're not dealing with passive house stuff until we're out of the ground a ways, if we're doing a podium or a garage. But nevertheless, as early as we can have this and get people rowing in the same direction, it really helps. Lack of clarity regarding who on which team, whether it's the trades or the CM, is going to gather day-to-day site verification data and how it should be organized. That needs to be discussed in that first meeting. The CPHC review of construction submittals, too late in the review chain. So we have submittals, right? The trades say, okay, we've got our issue for construction drawings, we have our shop drawings, we're going to go out and we're going to submit all of the stuff to build this thing. And oftentimes what I've seen is, the architect kind of holds the process. And to the extent that they're not experienced with passive house, they may not know when things come through that are actually important for passive house. And sometimes, unless someone experienced with passive house says, hey, you need to put the passive house person at the front of the submittal review process, we waste time. We run in circles because it goes to the architect. Then maybe it goes to the envelope consultant. Then maybe if it's something mechanical about a penetration, maybe it goes to the mechanical guys. Then if there's something like, it might go through the entire chain of consultants. And 2 weeks later, it finally gets to the passive house consultant. And they're like, oh, this totally isn't going to work. And so then you have to go through the whole thing again, right? So for all the passive house critical items, if we make sure in that pre-construction kind of layout that any of those items are clear, and we put the passive house person at the front of that submittal review process, we can short circuit a lot of the kind of chasing our tails and reduce the submittal review process. And then the other construction fail that I've seen, and it's not really a fail, it's just inefficiency, is shop drawing reviews done in a linear rather than collaborative fashion. And I'm going to talk more about that in a couple of minutes. So in terms of pre-construction passive house kickoff musts, this is probably old news to a lot of you guys, but I just want to crystallize it. It's really important to explain the why to the trades, review the specs, detailed review of our details as a warm-up for the shop drawing workshop for our primary envelope trades, review passive house testing and commissioning plan, review our construction schedule and identify any issues with the schedule. That's why we want to have our verification team there as well. Review our submittal procedures and identify who is responsible for what and when. And thank you to David Solomon for the image on this slide. Okay, so here's an invaluable tool that I have been using for the last few years for construction. And what it lists is passive house critical data. And it's pretty much on one sheet. It's not fancy. You guys can come up with something better. It's still got the Morrison Hershfield logo on it. I didn't have time to take it off. The beauty of this is it can be for anyone that's working on the Passive House project. The architect who's managing the submittal process can have this right above their computer. Hey, does it tick any of these boxes? Oh, I need to let the Passive House person know. The construction manager can have this in the trailer. The trades can have it in the trailer. And understanding that anything that's listed here in green is going to impact the Passive House energy balance, it's a learning process for everyone. So the more the trades see this and they're like, oh, all of these things impact Passive House energy balance. They keep seeing it again and again. The CM keeps seeing it again and again. Everyone learns as they go, and then we make sure that we don't get Wild West where we're getting submittals or change and substitution requests that are passed through. And then later on, you know, we true up the model and we're like, uh-oh, project's not working anymore. Something happened, something went wrong, something got approved that shouldn't have. Okay. So here's where I want to take a little bit of time and talk about this concept of an integrated shop drawing workshop. So a little bit of a new idea, but for those of you who attend the happy hour on Wednesdays, you probably heard me pipe up about this before. Essentially what happens in this process is prior to any primary envelope trades putting pen to paper, we all get together in one room. We've got the architect, someone from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer. We've got our primary envelope trades, our window manufacturer rep, who is good technically, and the CPHC. They come prepared to discuss strategies. Oh, and the construction manager is crucial here as well, to discuss strategies and materials prior to any shop drawing drafts. The MEP designer comes prepared with their list of penetrations. If they haven't made it before now, to the extent that they have a list of penetrations by building level, we can use that as a tool to talk about how are we air sealing all of those penetrations? Which ones of them are going to be the same kind of penetration and we're just going to do the same method? The CPHC comes prepared to model real time, because there may be some optimizations in terms of constructability to the architect's details that we need to see. Well, what happens if we push a window out? What happens if we push it in? Is our Passive House energy balance still good? Everyone together, you know, you have a big projection, and I mean, now we're doing this all virtually, so we screen share, and you go through either from bottom to top or top to bottom, what's happening at each of the intersections and the continuity of the air barrier where the overlaps happen. With your primary envelope trades, they come prepared to discuss what materials and methods they want to use, what they prefer. And then we can already ferret out during this workshop where there might be compatibility issues between materials. We can also ferret out in the overlaps between the trades who's going to do what and where each trade's responsibility stops and starts. So we all discuss together the connections and the detailing strategies that are shown in the architectural and structural drawings, and we optimize for constructability. So the name of the game is, how can we minimize labor costs? How can we make this easier on our trades? How can we make this easier to verify? How can we make it less expensive? And the benefit of this is that everyone gets to learn, the architect gets to learn. So on their next Passive House project, they've already got some ideas for ways to make their architectural drawings and details more like shop drawings, more ready to rumble. And then we all discuss the penetrations at each level and strategies for mitigating thermal bridges and air barrier continuity at those thermal bridges. CPHC provides feedback regarding compliance implications, and then the end result is that everyone agrees on what's going to be included in your mock-up, right? You identify like, ooh, these places are tricky. Trades want to mock this up. Like, it's going to be important for us to try this and make sure that it works. And once you've got your list of like, okay, these are the common penetrations we're going to have, then you can choose to include some of those penetrations in your mock-up as well. I have, you know, I've just screenshotted my little list that I use here, and you guys can create something similar for yourselves. And really, it's during this kind of workshop that the whole building air leakage prep starts. That's where it starts. Because we all know that accurate air tightness results require exclusion of intentional openings, and air tightness testing usually doesn't go well the first time out of the gate, except for when your construction manager has paid attention and knows what they're doing, or they're already a passive house expert and has taken their team through some of this kind of stuff. But usually where we're failing, incomplete air barrier, that's obvious because we haven't detailed it. We didn't catch it either in shop drawings or in our architectural detailing. Or we just have poor planning, or we have poor building preparation work. That can be a lot of it. Or just general lack of understanding for the trades of the process. So listing all of those penetrations out and making the schedule as I suggested is really a good way to make everyone aware, and again, rowing in the same direction. So these guys, Ledcor, they were my construction management team on a project I worked on with Morrison Hirschfields. And I'm not going to mention well, I guess I can mention the project by name because a good thing happened. They essentially leveraged me to review their quality assurance and quality control plan ahead of time, right? They said, hey, we want you to have a look at what we've got. We have a pretty good process, but we want to make sure it's ready for passive house. Can you go through it with a fine-tooth comb with us and point out places where we could do better? And so that really helped. And it helped them understand that they were already doing pretty good. They just needed to make a few tweaks to their QA/QC process. And they built a mock-up. And I just heard from one of my old colleagues at Morrison Hirschfield, this was their first passive house project that they did, Ledcor in Vancouver. Their preliminary blower door came in at 0.41 ACH 50. So first time out of the gate, they did it because they really paid attention. We went through this integrated shop drawing process. We figured out where all the penetrations were and we planned. Everyone is super happy. They're super happy. And now in the community, people are like, woohoo, this CM is an expert. Like, we're going to go to them next time, right? And it was their first project. One thing that I recommend, and I think that other people on the call, you guys might be nodding your heads, it's really hard for the superintendent to also be our passive house champion. That guy or gal already has a lot to do. So I really advocate for there being a building envelope foreman or someone who is the passive house envelope champion. And that's essentially a dedicated individual on the contractor team that for the project duration is ensuring the quality control of air barrier installation and tie-ins, and assuming full responsibility for that continuous air barrier. That might mean that they are corresponding with the passive house champions for each of the primary envelope trades, or it may just be all in their lap. It's really up to the individual builder how they want to do it. But that person should have a good amount of education. They should have gone through some professional training in terms of building envelope and air barrier installation, and understand where the weak spots are so that they know what to look for. These next few slides are courtesy of David Solomon. They come from construction sites. We've got an example here of some not very well applied tape, and the thing that he said about this slide is, a crappy tape job and a good tape job cost the same. The material costs the same. It's just attention to detail, right? That's not airtight. This is another one of David Solomon's slides, and this goes back to what I was saying about using the condensation risk and comfort criteria to not handcuff our trades into sole sourcing. So to the extent that we do that, we can start using things like Conair on our entry doors, not using, potentially passive house certified components. We don't always have to use those. They're pretty expensive. And that means we make our projects more affordable. We can get more domestic products and supply chain involved, and they work. We've got mistakes that happen in the field, right? So someone coming along thinking they're being helpful and cutting that that below grade barrier there because it was flapping in the wind. Mess ups do happen, and to the extent that they do, fixes can be expensive and time consuming. So really in that pre-construction meeting, walking through each of those details and each of those sort of overlaps where we have air barrier changing plane so that we make sure the trades are getting it, that can really help us avoid the fixes that are expensive and time consuming. And showing, to the extent that we may have new trades that haven't done it before, showing them from our projects that we've worked on, examples of, hey, this is how it should look. Do this, don't do this, right? That makes it really obvious. Like, hey, you don't want to like trim your barrier here so short that there's nothing to wrap up onto the wall. Bad idea. You also don't want to have your barrier flapping in the wind and getting torn over here. You also don't want your tape peeling off because your surface wasn't cleaned, right? Give them examples of like, hey, and I mean, this is what you guys do on Tech Tuesdays, right? That's what it's all about. So bringing that into our pre-construction meetings is really helpful for new trades. And that's what we need more and more of. We need more and more tradespeople coming in and learning this stuff and getting excited about it. This is another one of David's slides. And this one, I love this one. I had never even thought about this before I saw a slide and I was like, holy cow, this is huge. So this is a plumbing vent stack. And the example we have here is if you put it too close to the edge, you can't get a good air seal, right? We need a boot on this thing to air seal it. And if it's close to the edge, we have no room for the boot. So 6 to 8 inches minimum is going to allow us to get a good air seal. That one on the left, that's going to be pretty impossible. And our trades are going to be like, what do you want me to do? Okay. Also, this is another one of David's slides, and he says, teach your trades to use the IR camera. That's fun stuff, right? So if you're a construction manager, these things are getting less and less expensive. So, you know, even the phone ones, getting your trades to start using those and like, you know, looking around and getting curious, that allows them to have pride in their work also and get more intimately involved and excited. And also teaching them the difference between where it's no insulation and where it's air leakage. The important thing here is the Wild West, right? This goes back to really making sure that our trades understand the design intent, and to the extent that they don't, letting them know RFIs are okay. It's okay to request clarification. It's much better than having something done incorrectly and us having to fix it later. And then also it goes back to the substitution requests. We don't want things just sliding through and it being Wild West. And here's a good example of that. So say that you've got a VRF system and the trades are saying, well, you know, the price difference in these, like I want to go with the cheaper one, the $1,400 one, which is the LG, but guess what? The technical data on that is different. And when we factor that into the passive house model, we may have a tight enough margin that it's not going to fly anymore. So stuff like that is on the list of things that needs to be run by the passive house consultant. And here's another example. Say that we want to have, or our trades are proposing substitution of our ERV. The original ERV, the Swagon Gold we had, hey, that everything is complying just fine. But then we want to switch over to the system air, and that means, yeah, the system air is less expensive, but guess what? That means we're going to have more PV because there's more fan power with this one. And yeah, the other one costs 50K more, but the PV costs more, right? Now, we have renewable energy certificates that will take this cost down quite a bit, but this is important stuff. This can have real cost implications when it comes to passive house substitutions. So the other thing too is, you know, we want everyone on the team to be friends after the project is over. We don't want to create these situations where some people are happy and other people are not. The last part of the presentation is all about verification fails. So one of the ones that I have personally been involved in and at fault for is not having close or frequent enough contact between myself and the passive house verifier, and not sharing problem areas and building the plane and flight issues with the verifier up front so that they can keep an eye out and help solve them. Also, not including the passive house verifier in that pre-construction kickoff meeting. That person is important, and the sooner the trades are seeing that person and knowing they're friendly and they're there to help, the better. Also, CPHC not reviewing the construction manager, general contractor, and trades QA plan. We talked about that before. Or lack of collaboration between the construction manager and the passive house verifier on that verification plan, right? That shouldn't just be written in a silo. In other words, the passive house verifier, who's ever doing on site, shouldn't just go off in their office and say, okay, this is it. This is what we're doing. It needs to be a collaborative process so that everyone is happy with how it's going to roll out and it's realistic. This is a pretty important one if you're doing bigger buildings. Not designing with whole building air leakage test compartmentalization in mind. For example, if you design a building without putting potential temporary measures in place for blocking off floors to give you the ability to test floor by floor to isolate leaks, you do yourself a disservice, because it's pretty typical that leaks are going to happen unless you're a total rock star. And a lot of time and budget can be eaten up in trying to isolate the leaks and find where they're at. And to the extent you then have to go construct temporary measures and it's really difficult to do it, you just end up spinning your wheels. So thinking about, well, for this building, we've got curtain wall and there is going to be an opening between the curtain wall and the floor plate unless we make sure that there isn't, so we can isolate floor by floor. Like, that's a missed opportunity there. The other big thing that I've seen is not allowing enough time in the construction schedule for whole building air leakage testing prep and other verification tasks. When we're doing these large buildings, and Kevin can pipe up about this in the after hour, this takes a lot of time and it's really important that it's done correctly. You can see in this little image here, building prep is like 1 day. That is not enough for large buildings. That's not going to cut it. So letting the developer know, hey, you know, this is important. This is going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to pay off in the end, because we won't have delays where we have to go back and remobilize again and again. That can really help save the timeline and thus the budget, since time is money. And then the other one is not having a clear correction plan for testing failures. I've had one project where there were 30 plus verifier site visits because of the failures that happened, and because there was no really good root cause analysis plan of action, like what happens when we have failures, what are we going to do? So when it comes to preparation timing, I have Stephen Wong at Morrison Hirschfield to thank for most of the info and images on the slide. He is great at this stuff. For multi-unit residential, far more preparation is required than single family. And even for like open floor office, we need to make sure that all vents to the exterior are sealed for all suites. That includes dryer, bathroom, HRV exhaust intake, kitchen range hood exhaust, exterior ceiling, interior ceiling. I will give you guys the slides so you can come back and look at them. The long and the short of it is you might spend 1 to 2 hours per suite, depending on your access, prepping these things for blower door tests. So it's important to make sure that you have the labor to do that and you plan for it. And then we may have all of these sealed intentional openings that are listed over here, in addition to this other stuff. Pre-test memo and tasks are pretty important, that it all gets laid out. And this is part of the passive house testing plan that you want to have in place and collaborate on with whoever is doing the verification and the testing ahead of time. Specifically, who is responsible for the building prep? Is it the trades? Which trades? Who's doing it when? What are the tasks? What are the safety precautions? What's the testing approach? Are there overlapping tests that are going to happen where you can double up? Like if someone is doing an air tightness or an air test for a window, Can you double that up or do it on the same day? So coordinating the schedule to make sure you're allowing enough time, but being efficient where people can be in there at the same time testing different things is important. Some example tasks like store well doors propped fully open, elevator hoistway doors propped open if needed for air distribution, fan location, 1 to 3 fans per floor, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing to note is when we start doing these taller buildings, these high rises, more constricted buildings might require stations that are distributed. And I'm talking about air leakage testing stations, distributed low, middle, and high. And when it comes to verifiers, we have more and more verifiers that are getting pretty good at these large buildings, but this is where it's also important for multiple eyes to get their people on the passive house testing plan to make sure that we've got the appropriate electrical and networking requirements. How many blower doors do we need? Does our verifier have enough? Do we need to get them from somewhere else? How many manometers do we need? Do we have, we're not just going to be using regular wall outlets for doing these blower door tests. So we need to make sure we've got a Jenny or a few to power these things by. And then in addition, what time of day are we doing it? Is it on the weekend? Do we have the appropriate temperature differential if we're going to do infrared thermography? So there's a lot to think about here. And I encourage you guys to come back and take a look at these slides. If we are doing IR, it requires building pressurization, requires a temperature gradient between interior and exterior. Exterior review requires nighttime investigation. That needs to be factored in. If we have a high wind day, we need to figure out like, well, how much wind is too much? And we got to call it and do it on another day. Test plans should be laid out. Again, thanks to Stephen Wong for this image. And you can see this is from MH. They're making notes about this plan here, about where the testing stations are located. It's really clear ahead of time what's going to be where, so everyone knows. And then this is a plug that I want to do for our larger buildings. Right now in the Standards Committee ASHRAE 227, we're working on, actually David Holtzclaw, I don't know if he's in the audience or how many of you know him, but he's really helping the effort. But essentially what's happening now is as we get into these larger buildings, we realize sometimes the sheer magnitude of the effort to test these entire buildings and only test them at the end or require that everything be tested at the end or that each floor be tested, it's unreasonable and it's too costly. So we're having to come up with different protocols for ensuring that as we build, as we go up, we can check to make sure we're doing a good job. So compartmentalizing, we need to do that for PHIUS anyways, for the dwelling units, but I'm talking about floor by floor. And I'm also talking about guarded blower door tests. And what this is the ability to pressure neutralize a floor above and below so that you can test the floor in between and make sure that you're doing okay, air sealing wise. And it requires a little more building preparation, but to the extent that we can do this and spot check and not at the end have an entire building, which is being built floor by floor in phases spiraling up anyways, that means at the end, if we have failures, we don't have this intensive fixing and remobilization effort. We're checking ourselves along the way and correcting as we go. Ultimately, time equals money. So however we're going to do it, including building airtightness testing in the project schedule in a realistic way is important, and making sure that we've got pre-test walkthroughs for building prep and on the test day, and no other scheduled building work on test day, right? That's just going to complicate things. And then being prepared for schedule changes due to potential need for remobilization. So I know that was a lot of information. I could drone on and on, but in conclusion, I just want to say that there's a lot of ways we can make passive house take longer, cost more, and be painful. Our commercial and large-scale residential developers, architects, and construction managers are more sophisticated, but it doesn't mean they understand the complexities and interdependencies of passive house. And a lot of folks who have been building, even at small scale, you've already got a leg up. You can teach these guys something. You can infiltrate and integrate and help some of these larger CMs understand where they need to go. And it's our job as PH experts to simplify things for our teams. Large scale developer business as usual design bid build model, it's really not ideal for Passive House, but if we do a good enough job of laying out the groundwork and what the roadmaps are with some front end refinements and intentional collaboration, we can make it work until we get vertical integration. So we as a community, we can definitely help reshape our construction industry if we work together using techniques like I'm showing you here, which are less about how we put the building together and more about our workflow. And then this is something that I really learned from Adam Cohen, lean construction and borrowing the principles of lean to inform our work. So using standard work, which is something you repeat again and again and again, to work smarter and not harder. In other words, if you find yourself doing something multiple times, systemize it, make it a thing, and then you can streamline it and continually improve it. And then lastly, share your mistakes so that we can all learn from them and from each other. And that's it.
Awesome stuff, Prudence. You hold on for a second, have a sip of whatever beverage you have, and Zach's going to come on with some updates.
All right, fantastic. I have a bunch of cool programming that I'm about to share. I'm going to share a bunch of links for everybody so you can get more information about that. Before I do, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our sponsors. None of the work that we do at the Accelerator and events like this, none of this would be possible without their support. And so I really encourage everybody on this call to include them in your projects and patronize them as they've been supporting the growth of the Accelerator. So our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, and our patron sponsors are BR+A, Brennan Insulation and Airtightness, Inotech Windows and Doors, and US Engineered Wood T-Stud. And a special shout out to Partel, who is our sponsor of the week this week and is providing support for all of our programming this week. They're also a founding sponsor, as you just heard. So tomorrow, or right now, we have our current Passive House podcast episode features a conversation between Matthew Cutler-Welsh, who's on the call right now, the co-host of the podcast, and Anton Dobrevsky of the Passive House School, going into Anton's roots in Bulgaria, his studies in Belgium, and his amazing progress with the Passive House School in just 3 short years, creating this online institution of Passive House learning. Tomorrow, we have the Global Passive House Happy Hour featuring Jesper Cruz of Passive House Maine, who will be talking about his own multi-year Passive House retrofit of his house. So if you're curious about, you're thinking about your own house and how it might become a Passive House, come and see Jesper's challenges and solutions tomorrow. Next week, we have Brandon Weiss of Devel, who will be coming to talk about smart ASS tools. That's air tightness or air sealing specialist, ASS. Many know Brandon well. He's been part of the community for a long time, and I can't wait for his presentation next week. And then next Wednesday, we'll have Amy Fila from Baxt Ingwe Architects talking about the retrofit of this historic firehouse into a Passive House project. And this is all part of February, which for us is, among many things, Retrofit Month. So speaking of Retrofit Month, this is the last one I'm going to share. We're doing a retrofit summit, a Passive House retrofit summit on February 15th. This is sponsored by Zola Windows. It will include leaders from the Reframed initiative from Pembina Institute, the Retrofit New York from NYSERDA, Realize from Rocky Mountain Institute, Recover initiative from Habit Studio, triple-decker challenge from Mass CEC and the 50 Houses Research Initiative from Passive House Maine. So it's going to be a great program. Links are in chat. I'll resend them. Thanks very much.